Welcome back. New satellite images show the Russian military's refitting old Soviet bases in the Arctic and building new ones. One reason for the activities, the ice melt climate change is causing. Sharon Burke is senior advisor at New America. She's former Assistant Secretary of Defense for Operational Energy Plans and Programs and writing in Defense News about the Arctic. Sharon, you write this in this piece. Climate change means the Arctic is ultimately a geopolitical contest no one's going to win, regardless of any investment in military materiel. Does that mean that we're thinking about the problem in the Arctic from a national security perspective the wrong way?
I think we have to have a much more balanced perspective than we've had for the last few years, for sure. In that the reason, even if you look at all the strategies that the Pentagon has put out, it doesn't even mention climate change. It's like it's magic that the ice is retreating, right? But if you don't take into account climate change in two ways, one is the way that it's a challenging environment with permafrost melt and changing weather patterns, and factor that into what you're building or doing there, but also the longer term picture that if that becomes an entirely ice-free region, where it really is a blue Arctic, as the Navy strategy says, that means that we're seeing catastrophic climate change and we've got bigger concerns. So I think we have to balance the near-term concerns about competition there with the longer-term concerns about what climate change is going to do to the world.
So two items from your comments there, Sharon. One is that the Biden administration has made it very clear that not just in national security, but all across its approach to every problem, it will consider the implications of climate change. So I wonder what that might mean for the theory of how we approach the Arctic. And the other is, you mentioned all the strategies and you reference those in your piece. Is that maybe part of the problem, is that we have a bunch of strategies from a national security perspective and we don't have one?
I agree with you on that. I definitely think that the joint force, that each part of the joint force is going to have a different responsibility and a different approach when it comes to an entirely new strategic frontier like the Arctic. But you have to have an overarching vision for what's in the national interest and how we're going to approach it and how all those pieces fit together. And I don't think we have that now.
Is it better then maybe that we don't have that now, given that, as you said, until now we have not necessarily, at least explicitly said, climate change is potentially part of the problem that we have in the Arctic?
That's a good way of looking at it, that we kind of need a fresh start here. We need a president that's going to be pragmatic about it. And being pragmatic doesn't just mean looking at what Russia's doing and reacting and jumping because Russia says jump. It means being realistic about the strategic competition and the military buildup, and also about the environmental situation there, and making your investments in both, hard defense in materiel and also in soft defense in your alliances and in treaties, and making those things together with that whole picture, not just the pieces of it.
So to go back to my first question then, what would you like to see happen regarding tying strategy and tying investments into this pragmatic approach? If the theory is nobody's going to win there, what does success look like, and how do we tie the investments and strategy to achieving that success?
I think success there, first of all, one of the things that without question is going to be success for us is if we really stick with our partners and allies. I mean, we have littoral nations there that are founding members of NATO: Iceland, Norway, Denmark. These are our great strengths in the region, and we're smart to invest in those relationships first and foremost. I think there are other things like the law of the sea, which the United States has never ratified, that put us at a terrible disadvantage in that region. We should be looking at all the cooperative mechanisms there, the Arctic Council, whether we need some kind of new cooperative mechanism for security cooperation. Look at it this way: the Russians are building up, and it's going to be hard for them, right? Because they have to deal with these changing conditions as well, with the permafrost melt and the other things that will make it really hard for them to continue to build up and maintain these positions. But the Chinese are doing it really differently. They're putting a strategic position in place that's multifaceted, that's about economics, that's about presence, that's about projection. We should be looking more at what the Chinese are doing than what the Russians are, as far as what do we want? We shouldn't just be reacting and saying, okay, let's put a whole bunch of, iron in the water up there. Let's look at how we have a strategic position that then doesn't have a whole bunch of opportunity cost for dealing with climate change. I think what the Biden administration is doing now, which is they're hedging strategically with China, but they're engaging on climate change, is a really smart strategy for the Arctic. If we don't make progress on climate change, we lose there no matter what. Like, whoever's going to get access to rare earths will be irrelevant if we're looking at feet of sea level rise and, extreme weather patterns all over the world. So let's do both. Let's protect our position there, and let's advance our position on climate change.
And you argue in this piece, Sharon, that that's exactly the case. You write toward the end, the most important strategic gain in the high north is about cutting greenhouse gas emissions at home, working with other countries to do the same. That's not necessarily something that's easy to write into a national defense strategy, not capital letters, small letters, is it, Sharon?
I don't think it's easy. No, you know what? I don't think it's that hard. I just think we haven't tried to do it yet, other than maybe a few lines here and there acknowledging that there's an issue. But I think now the Biden administration is pushing the pace on this with their executive orders, where they're saying we must incorporate it into national defense strategy. I think that scientifically we've got plenty of good projections on what we think might happen, and we can incorporate those into how we look at our national security. I mean, it's fascinating. Before we did this interview, I was just looking at the headlines to see what the latest news was on the Arctic, and it's like a gladiator contest or something. It's like, Comet is standing there saying, "Are you entertained?" Half the articles are about competition in the north and green berets and magic cameras and, oh my God, we're all going to fight there. And then every now and then there'll be an article that's like, killer freak winter storm in 2018 in Europe, directly geophysically tied to the melting ice in the Arctic. And terrible, weird lightning storms across the Arctic are killing people. If we can't figure out a way to include both of those elements, we're definitely going to be wasting our money and spending it on the wrong things.
Sharon Burke, terrific insight as always. Great to have you back on the program.
Great to be with you.